Well, you can see out the back there, they've just had the national titles for the Sabo sailing boats, if I've got it right. But what a beautiful afternoon here on the Central Coast, New South Wales, Australia. You know, this reminds me of the peaceful, good times that you can have in a relationship where everything's going smooth, and those wonderful moments, those memorable moments that you can share, that we all want to share in our relationships. But that's an infantile way of looking at it, isn't it? To think that everything's just going to be all right all the time. The human soul just doesn't work that way, does it? It's full of upheaval and turmoil, and as hard as we try, there's always something going on. I think a lot of relationships can be destroyed through interferences. For the most part, if people are left alone and they haven't got human outside interferences or substance interferences, for the most part, things can be all right. But interferences, and there's so many different ways in which that can happen. And it doesn't make it right. Just because an interference can happen, it doesn't make it right. But they do happen. There's the other side of things there. It's a beautiful place. Bit of a storm there. Lovely place. I've lived here all my life and I've never gotten tired of it ever. Not once. Oh, I've had some moments, but it's a wonderful place. So I think if you can get through a relationship without any interferences, another interference can be immaturity. You're just not developed enough to be able to rationale conflict. The lady that I'm with at the moment, she's incredibly able to rationale some of my objections, or at least difficult ways of looking at which things can be repaired in the relationship. She's withstood some incredible criticism that was necessary for the relationship to be diagnosed at where it was and how it is. Sometimes to face a bad diagnosis, like you go to the doctor and you get the phone call you've got cancer. That's not an easy thing to face. Hey mate, that's a difficult thing to face. Well, if you get a diagnosis of there's something seriously wrong in the relationship and you're not being aware enough to see it coming, then they're brave, swimming in there. See them people swimming in there? There's bull sharks in there. So they can play with fire if they want. Very brave. Anyway. And you're confronted with the criticism you never saw coming. This happens all the time. And sometimes we just aren't able to face what we're being shown. willing to change or let go of something that's just bringing sadness and unkindness, or sadness and disappointment and frustration. You know, sometimes things get really tough, and the other person has to say. I think for the most part, if people don't speak up, that's where things go down the tubes, because if you don't speak up, then nobody realizes or knows what's eating away at you. And when you have bitternesses and resentments building, they can really destroy your relationship. That's all there is to it. They just can, and they do. And it's because we haven't usually got the courage to say what might be upsetting us. But this afternoon, I think, is a beautiful example of when relationships are going fine. You know, we all wish for this and we all want this, but it's like the weather, isn't it? And the tide changes, the weather changes, the wind changes, circumstances change. You know, and it can wear us down, and we need to be able to understand that these things are predictable so that we can mentally be able to deal with these things. There's just so many unpredictables. There's just so many unpredictables in a relationship. And that's not necessarily all negative either. There can be positive unpredictables as well. Things that happen that you don't expect that bring joy and happiness. There's those things that happen as well. But it's not all joy and happiness and these things all the time. It's variable, and we need to accept that these things are variable. And when things change, that becomes, for the most part, a challenge, because we don't like change. Nobody likes change. So I just want to get across today to do everything you can to learn about the unpredictables of relationships, how the one thing that is predictable, that is chaos, is inevitable. Here they are. And that these things you can mentally prepare for these things. You can mentally prepare. That's the main thing. You don't have to be caught off guard. You can learn. You can learn. So I'll leave you with that thought as the afternoon wears on. This is Dr. Jason W. Morrison, Theologist, New South Wales, Australia. Bye.